and they were heavy supporters of President Trump's latest presidential campaign. I think part of it too is this sense um, of basically the according to the administration's viewpoint, as they voiced it to us, is essentially the U.S. is good at making oil. We've got plenty of oil beneath our feet. Oil is cheap here. I was just in Louisiana over the weekend, and you can get a gallon of gas for like 2.50 a gallon. Over in some parts of the state. In Europe and other places, it's not like that. They don't have their own energy to produce, even if they wanted to produce it. So they have to focus. It's easier for them to focus on renewable energy and get their own energy at home. But for the U.S., if we want to go that route, we basically have to go against some of our current strengths. Their criticism of that is you're playing today's game and you're going to lose tomorrow's game if you don't get into the renewable energy industry heavier. And the thing that's driving renewable energy, at least in the administration's mind, are fears of climate change. You can also make the argument that renewable energy is also now cheaper than new fossil fuel energy investments. But in their mind, if we basically defang the fear of climate change, it's better for the oil industry, our home industries, and the one that's backing the current president.
And we are standing by for Speaker Johnson's press conference live at the Capitol. As soon as he gets to the podium, we'll take you there directly. But in the meantime, we'll talk to Kay in Omaha, Nebraska. Independent Line, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for discussing climate change on this program. Pollution and emissions are clearly causing climate change and weather impacts like flooding and severe storms and heat waves. In our society, our economics drives everything, and I don't understand why we can't charge the entities that are polluting some sort of fee. They're polluting for free. They're putting emissions in the air. The coal plants are creating this issue. Why don't we have the strength to charge them for this negative impact that they're causing?
A lot of it has to do with, there's the cynical view, and then there's the actual, there's a practical view. The cynical view is that the companies don't want to pay for it, and therefore they get their lobbyists on the Hill and they convince people not to vote for, anything that would introduce a carbon tax or any sort of mechanism that would charge them for carbon emissions. One of the practicalities that's been difficult is who do you charge, or how do you measure the carbon that's being emitted? So one of the big fights has been this technical matter of, they call them scope 2 or scope 3 emissions. Scope 2 is, you can charge people for the emissions that you may, your building or your business, may put out. But, if you're getting oil from a company, should you be charged for the emissions that come from their operations? If you're getting, oil or a company from more than one, well site, how do you measure what's coming out of each well site? How do you aggregate it? You might be on one end of the pipeline, but the actual emissions might be on the other end of the pipeline. Who has to pay for it? So it's one of those things that, even some of the larger companies will say, yeah, we should do something. But when you get into the weeds of how much do you charge, how do you measure it, it quickly falls apart. Interestingly, I forgot, the Biden administration actually in one of the laws they passed, the Congress passed.
And Ben, we're not going to be able to get to that. Ben Lefebvre, thanks so much for joining us, Politico's deputy energy editor. And we will take you straight to the Capitol. Speaker Johnson is right at the podium. Have a great day, everybody.
Coincidental, you know how I think, but it's after 40 days of wandering in the wilderness and making the American people suffer needlessly, some Senate Democrats finally have stepped forward to end the pain. It appears to us this morning that our long national nightmare is finally coming to an end, and we're grateful for that. At least some Democrats now finally appear ready to do what Republicans and President Trump and millions of hardworking American people have been asking them to do for weeks. But as we said from the beginning, the people's government cannot be held hostage to further anyone's political agenda. That was never right. And shutting down the government never produces anything. It never has, if you study history. And so here we are. I want to remind everybody this morning of another critical point that you've heard me here repeat over and over the last several weeks. It's something that I and Leader John Thune and President Trump and every Republican leader have all said repeatedly from the beginning. We have always been open to finding solutions to reduce the oppressive costs of health care under the Unaffordable Care Act. We just made clear that we would not and should not ever do that, that is, negotiate as hostages. And I've also reminded you here every morning at this press conference throughout the shutdown, Republicans have not just been talking about reducing costs and fraud and abuse in so many areas and in health care. We've been actually passing new laws to accomplish that urgent mission for the people, and we will continue to do so. So here's where we are by way of schedule, just so you know, you're following. And if you're not at home, if you're waking up to this good news this morning, the Senate's vote late last night of 60 to 40 opens the door now. The Senate is moving forward on an amended House CR, a continuing resolution, that will reopen the government until January 30th. Added to that are provisions to fully fund SNAP provisions through the end of the next fiscal year, which is September 2026, guaranteed back pay for all federal workers who have been made to endure these hardships over the last several weeks. And it also includes passage of 3 appropriations bills, which we're grateful to be moving through the process. That is the Military Construction Veterans Affairs bill, it's the Agriculture bill, and the Legislative Branch bill. The Senate will be back in session this morning to finish their job, and we're certainly praying that they do. They'll need unanimous consent from all senators to fast-track their final vote. As you know, there are some procedural hurdles that one or more could throw in the way, but we certainly hope that they won't do that because so many people across this country are desperate for the government to reopen. At the very moment that they do that final vote, I will call all House members to return to Washington as quickly as possible. We'll give a 36-hour formal and official notice so that we can vote as soon as possible to pass the amended CR bill and get it to the president's desk. As you all know, and he said as recently as last night, I was with him, and he told the press, he said, we want to get the government open. He's very anxious to get the government reopened and to end the Schumer shutdown. We all are. With regard to the travel challenges, I spoke yesterday at some length with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, my former colleague and good friend, and he lamented the serious situation that we have with air travel in the U.S. He's bent over backwards, as all members of the administration and the cabinet have done in all of their areas of jurisdiction, to try to keep the government working for the people and to mitigate the pain and the harm. But the problem we have with air travel is that our air traffic controllers are overworked and unpaid, and many of them have called in sick. That's a very stressful job, and even more stressful exponentially when they're having trouble providing for their families. And so air travel has been grinding to a halt in many places. And as of Sunday, nearly half of all domestic flights and U.S. flights were either canceled or delayed. And it's a very serious situation. So I'm saying that by way of reminder. I'm stating the obvious to all my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats in the House. You need to begin right now returning to the Hill. We have to do this as quickly as possible. Now, we look forward to the government reopening this week so Congress can get back to our regular legislative session. We have a lot of business to do, as you all know, and we will be working in earnest. There'll be long days and long nights here for the foreseeable future to make up for all this lost time that was imposed upon us. I want to close with something that's important. I think it's important to say that this is genuine. I mean this sincerely. We applaud the 7 Senate Democrats and 1 independent senator who did the right thing. They decided to put principle over their personal politics. And my urgent plea of all my colleagues in the House, and that means every Democrat in the House, is to think carefully, pray, and finally do the right thing and help us to bring an end to the pain of the American people. This has gone on too long. Too many people have suffered, and it's long overdue. That's the update I wanted to give you this morning. There are probably lots of questions, but I'm going to get a lot of my own questions answered later today, so stay tuned for more. Thanks so much.
Our live coverage from Capitol Hill on this day 41 of the government shutdown will continue at noon Eastern today with a press conference from House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries. He's expected to respond to the deal that was advanced in the Senate last night to reopen the government. Live coverage here on C-SPAN. Democracy. It isn't just an idea, it's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy, unfiltered. On Monday, it's a conversation on ways to strengthen democracy and respond to challenges in the United States and abroad. Speakers include Democracy Playbook 2025 co-editors Norm Eisen and Jonathan Katz. From the Brookings Institution, watch it live at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on C-SPAN. C-SPAN Now, our free mobile app, and online at cspan.com.
Premiums will spike by thousands of dollars a month. Millions will lose insurance. Democrats have sounded the alarm. We have demanded for months to meet with the Republican leadership. But Republican leaders refuse to even discuss the issue, let alone negotiate it. We've asked them to meet in the summer and throughout the shutdown. To this day, Republicans still say no. We asked President Trump to step in and meet with us to deliver lower health care for Americans, and instead, Donald Trump has taken the American people hostage, from cutting off food aid to hungry families and vets and seniors and kids, to manufacturing flight cancellations, to cutting off home heating aid, while he builds a billion-dollar ballroom with gold-plated toilets. Therefore, I must vote no. This health care crisis is so severe, so urgent, so devastating for families back home that I cannot in good faith support this CR that fails to address the health care crisis. But let me be clear, however this vote turns out, this fight will and must continue. Democrats must fight because of millions of families will lose health care coverage. We must fight because children who are dying of cancer will not get health care coverage. We must fight because a senior citizen cannot afford to pay $25,000 a year just for health insurance. We must fight to keep millions from financial ruin. And make no mistake about it, the American people know who is inflicting this health care trauma on them: Donald Trump and the Republicans. Americans will remember Republican intransigence every time they make a sky-high payment on health insurance. So we are going to fight legislatively, fight back home, fight in the courts, and bring this fight in the elections. Health care costs made a major impact on the 2025 election, and they will certainly have an even greater impact on the 2026 election. So in conclusion, the contrast between the two parties is crystal clear. Republicans are the party hell-bent on taking people's health care away, all to bow to the billionaire elite and special interests. Democrats are united as the party of lower health care costs and improving our health care system. We will not give up this fight. We will deliver for the American people. I yield the floor.
On this vote, the yeas are 60 and the nays are 40. 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn having voted in the affirmative. The motion upon reconsideration is agreed to.